Daryl Morey. Tough spot, good spot. We'll find out. He hasn't had a draft pick. He didn't know that he was going to have a draft pick, and then all of a sudden he comes here and he's got all these draft picks. So we'll see if the Sixers are up to speed tomorrow night.
First, Week 10 of football is in the books, and now it's time to review the tape, get ready for Week 11. There is no better place to get in on the action than with DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings is giving all new users the chance to earn a sign-up bonus up to $1,000 when signing up using promo code 973. Don't forget about UFC 255 as well. Download the app now. Use promo code 973 when you sign up. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey only. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, draft tomorrow night. We're going to talk more about it now. Paul Hudrick will be covering the 76ers for 97.3 ESPN.com. You probably are familiar with his work from NBC Sports Philadelphia. He'll be on the Sixers beat, Sixers Insider, on air, online, and on this draft as he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline with a look at the Sixers rumors and draft. Paul, what's going on, man?
Hey, Mike. How are you, man?
All is well. It feels weird to be kind of in the draft, but I feel like we almost need it with this Eagles disaster that's going on. It kind of gets our mind off of it all. But let's start with some of the stuff that's happening and get your take on the reality of James Harden being a Sixer. Very real, not so real, far-fetched. Where do you think that kind of stands? Is it only because Morey's here, or is there some possibility that the Sixers could be involved there?
See, I don't see it happening. So from the onset, I'll be honest, I didn't see him being moved at all because I just saw him as he's Houston's asset. He's the guy who whenever they can have butts in the seats, he's the guy that puts butts in the seats. So I never saw them moving him. Now it's looking more and more like I was wrong and that he is going to get moved. But when you look at the Brooklyn Nets and what they kind of have to offer in a if the Sixers were willing to put Ben Simmons on the table, maybe that changes things. I don't know that they are willing to, and I don't know what else Houston would want in addition to Ben Simmons. But I just see the Nets package without Ben Simmons as being much more attractive. And again, when you look at the roster, I personally think James Harden would be a much better fit in Philadelphia than he would be in Brooklyn when you look at what they already have with Kyrie Irving, and that's going to be the worst defensive backcourt in the NBA. But I don't see right now, it's not looking good for a potential Sixers trade. And I don't think it's necessarily because James Harden wouldn't want to come here. He might be open to it, but yeah, it's looking more and more like he's going to be a Brooklyn Net.
All right. Now, for the people who are like, hey, you got to give up Ben Simmons, and there seems to be a split. I can't give up on Ben yet, or hey, Harden and Embiid would be a great pairing. Should the Sixers be willing, if it took Ben Simmons, to part with Ben Simmons to get a James Harden? You got a 31-year-old guy and a 24-year-old guy.
For me, I would say yes. And I'm one of Ben Simmons' biggest defenders in this city. I'm a huge Ben Simmons guy. I think this guy is still in with him. He's 24 years old. He's already one of the best defensive players in the league to me, one of the best players in transition in the NBA. We all know the shortcomings. We don't have to go over that. But, yeah, if you're looking at that deal, if you're Daryl Morey, you have to consider it. I mean, James Harden is legitimately the best offensive basketball player we've seen over the last, 5 years at least. So to get him here with Joel Embiid and just the amount of free throws alone those two would rack up on a nightly basis, how dangerous they'd be together, I would certainly say that would be on the table for me 100%. The other thing is I don't know what else they would want because, I don't think a James Harden for Ben Simmons swaps would get it done. I think they're going to want more than that. So then I guess you're looking at what would the package be? How much would be too much? But if you're looking at it on the surface, like would I be hesitant to put Ben Simmons in a package for James Harden? No, because I think that puts you in a spot where you'd be competing for an Eastern Conference title immediately if you put James Harden in this lineup next to Joel Embiid.
Looking around the East, last night there were some moves being made by Milwaukee. They now have Bogdanovich, Drew Holiday, Middleton, Giannis. How does that move the needle for you, and how does that compare to the Sixers, knowing that, trades might happen with Al Horford or so, but right now, did that move the needle for you in terms of where the Bucks are?
For me, definitely, at least for next season, because to me, Drew Holiday I've never been a big Bledsoe guy, I can't lie. I think Drew Holiday just is a much better overall basketball player, one of the best defensive guards in the entire NBA, a solid outside shooter, a guy that can make some plays off the dribble, can run a pick and roll, You put him and Giannis on the same team defensively. I think Chris Middleton's actually a kind of underrated defender. He's a pretty solid defender. So, and Brook Lopez, the way he's really turned his game into being such a dominant defensive center now, you know, from a defensive standpoint alone, I think they're going to be arguably the best team in the NBA. But it's, you know, what Mike, what you already alluded to, you know, the idea that this just sends, more than anything, a message to Giannis, hey, we are all in. We want everything to be around you. Because that price, that's a steep price, man. 3 first-round picks. I'm sure there's some protections involved, but that's a steep price for 1 year of Drew Holiday. Then again, you do own his bird rights. So if it works out and you make a deep run, you know, maybe you bring Drew Holiday back, you run it back with them. Bogdanovich is another guy, solid player, can make a play off the dribble, can run a pick and roll, can run an offense, can play off the ball, so a versatile kind of guy. So, yeah, I mean, to me, the Milwaukee Bucks has positioned themselves, I think, to, again, be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Whether that's enough to put them over the top and get past, you know, the Miamis and the Bostons, we'll see.
Paul, you look at the deal that was made for Chris Paul. Would you have liked to see the Sixers be involved in a deal for Paul?
Yeah, definitely. Chris Paul is definitely a guy. You know, the price tag is obviously high as far as his salary, what he makes, and, you know, at 35 years old. What I think the Phoenix Suns could offer the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Sixers couldn't, was cap relief. You know, they're not taking back any bad contracts in that deal for Chris Paul. So if you're Oklahoma City and you're looking at the Sixers as a trade candidate, you're going to have to take on Al Horford or Tobias Harris. Those are big contracts for long term that really aren't going to help you, especially with what Oklahoma City is clearly looking trying to do, which is stockpile picks and get expiring contracts that they can maybe move. When you look at the Sixers, they don't have that to offer. So I just think there just wasn't a competitive enough deal the Sixers could offer that would have been better than what Phoenix was offering.
When looking at ways to fix this roster, there were reports about Patty Mills, Josh Richardson. Is that something that interests you?
100%. Now, I'll be honest. I love Patty Mills. He's one of my a guy I really like and really root for, and I think he's a damn good player. As a guy who can just come in, again, create his own shot, can run a pick and roll, can run an offense, can really shoot the ball. I think, last year I think he was like a little bit down, but in general, he is an elite 3-point shooter. He's kind of a lower minutes guy with Greg Popovich because they have so many good guards. I think he's around 25 a night or so. So depending on what they do in the draft, maybe that goes up or down. Maybe he stays around 25 minutes. Maybe Doc Rivers, if he comes here, maybe he goes up a little bit. But yeah, if you're looking at pure fit, Patty Mills is certainly a better fit on this team and this offense than Josh Richardson is because, again, his ability to create off the dribble, to run an offense, and to just hit outside wide open shots, which he would have many with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid in there. So, yeah, I would consider Patty Mills a pretty significant upgrade for them.
Paul Hudrick covers the 76ers for 97.3 ESPN.com. He will all this draft season tomorrow night. We'll have more on our website. He's got 8 players that could fit the Sixers in the draft. We'll look at that in a second. But how realistic, Paul, in your mind, is that Al Horford or Tobias Harris are gone?
Well, draft night, I'm not so sure. But in general, I think Daryl Morey finds a way to unload Al Horford's contract and bring back something useful. Now, when I say useful, I don't mean, not a star or anything like that, but a guy who just fits better than what Al Horford does. Because I think any reasonable person could look at what you saw with the Sixers last year and just say, yeah, this Al Horford thing with Joel Embiid on the court and Ben Simmons on the court just flat out doesn't work. As a backup 5, sure, he's solid, but a $20+ million backup 5, that's not really a palatable situation. So I think Morey will explore avenues to move Al Horford, and then he'll find something useful in return. Tobias Harris, I just don't think you're going to find a taker for that contract. I really don't. And on top of that, I think, Tobias, we have to be realistic. I don't think he's ever going to live up, to that contract. He signed a max player deal. He's never going to live up to that. But I think he could still have a role if you bring in other players that could fit this team. If you bring in a guy like a Patty Mills or a guy like a Buddy Hield who, could fit the pieces better, then maybe Tobias Harris could find a role. So to me, if you're asking which guy's more likely, I definitely think Al Horford, and I would not be surprised to see Daryl Morey find a way to move on from that deal.
All right, Paul, let's go to the draft tomorrow night. They have 5 picks, 21 in the first round, and then 4 picks in the second round. They're in various spots. You would imagine that they don't make all 5 picks, so you would think this team would be active on draft night. So if I say active, do you anticipate a move up from 21?
Maybe not a move up from 21. What I think would be more likely is they take a player at 21, and then maybe they leverage 36 and 34 to get themselves back into the first round. Because the other thing you have to look at with the Sixers is they are cap strapped. They are going to be most likely a team that's in the luxury tax. So a first-round contract, you're looking at a guy who's going to be low money, and he's basically guaranteed to be here for 4 years because he gets 2 years and then 2 option years. So if you can get 2 guys who, a guy at 21 and maybe a guy, let's say, late 20s or at 30, that's 2 guys you now have that are cheap and cost-controlled and young. And the Sixers need all of the young, cheap, cost-control kind of guys they can get. So to me, that would make the most sense is a guy at 21, then maybe leveraging those picks at 34, 36 to move back into the back end of the first round.
So at pick 21, who would excite you the most?
It's a tough call. So if Cole Anthony, it's the guy that we've seen, or the draft buzz is that he's falling. He had a tough year at North Carolina. But this is a guy who ESPN had as the second best player coming out of high school. And now we're talking about him possibly being, falling into the 20s of the NBA draft. Look, the supporting cast in North Carolina wasn't very good, flat out. That's the way you got to look at it. He didn't have much space to operate. He had a knee injury, a meniscus injury that he had to have repaired. So when you factor in all of that, I still think the talent is there for him to be, again, a guy that the Sixers need, a shot creator, a guy who's, a microwave scorer off the bench. I think he can fill that role. Now, if he's not there, 2 guys I really like the most, and I mentioned in that article, are Tyrell Terry from Stanford and Desmond Bane from TCU. To me, Desmond Bane is like the safest pick because at worst, I think this guy is going to be able to hit threes and he's going to be able to play serviceable defense. So if that's the worst thing you're getting, that still fits a pretty good checks a couple pretty big boxes for the Sixers. With Terry, the knock is going to be his size, a little undersized. I think he played at 6'1", 160 at Stanford, but man, he could really shoot the basketball, has some combo guard ability, that guy that I think, again, could mesh really well with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. So those are the kind of the 3 guys that I have my eye on. Of course, there are plenty of other guys, but to me, if Cole Anthony falls to 21, I'm pulling the trigger.
All right, so if you're at 21, a lot of times in a deep draft, I don't know what you would define this draft as, but a lot of times the casual fan will say, I'm drafting 20. Is that guy really helping? Can they get a guy that will actually help them right away picking where they are?
Yeah, again, I think Desmond Bane is the guy at 21 that if you take him, I think he has the best chance to help you right away because he was a 4-year player, ton of experience, shot over 43% from 3 during his career. So he's got that ability. And again, he's built solidly. If you see this guy, he's built like a tank. So he's going to be able to withstand NBA punishment. He's got an NBA body already. And the knocks are going to be his length. He's got a negative wingspan at 6'6". He's not necessarily a shot creator, although he did flash a little potential of being able to maybe run the pick and roll his senior year at TCU. So of all the guys I think that could be available at 21, I think Bane is the guy who you plug him in, he plays right away. Some might say that 21 might be a little too early for Bane. I've seen some projections that have him going in the second round, but if he's the guy you take at 21, I think he's got the best shot of being in Doc Rivers' rotation from day one.
All right, they got all those picks in the second round. We do anticipate, I would imagine, some movement there, but are there a couple of guys in that second round, especially with those 2 higher picks, that you would be intrigued by if they were kind of still hanging around there?
Yeah, so I've already seen that the Isaiah Joe rumors out there that supposedly the Sixers have already promised them. If that's at pick 21, that's to me a terrible decision. But at 34 or 36, yeah, I see him. A guard from Arkansas can really, really shoot it. I mentioned him in the article as well. I see a guy who could be sort of like a version of Furkan Korkmaz that might have a better shot at sticking with NBA wings defensively. Not afraid to shoot the ball. I think he took 9 threes a game last year, so that'd be a guy I definitely would have my eye on. And I think one area that people kind of overlook, because clearly this team needs guards, they need smaller players, but they don't really have any developmental bigs behind Joel Embiid. Norvell Pell, people don't realize, he was a rookie last year, but he's actually older than Joel Embiid. So they don't have kind of that guy in their pipeline that could serve as a Joel Embiid backup. So I look at Xavier Tillman from Michigan State, was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, versatile guy, has improved his shot and has a pretty good feel for the game. I think he averaged 3 assists per game as a big man. That's pretty solid numbers. So I think as just a solid NBA big with some defensive versatility, Xavier Tillman is a guy that interests me. Another guy that seems to be kind of falling under the radar. Some people view him as kind of a middle second round guy, but I would have him in play at 36 is Paul Reed from DePaul. Really, really good defensive, versatile player, 6'9", long, had over 2.5 blocks a game and over 1.5 steals per game last year. Has some potential offensively. The shot's a little funky, but it goes in a lot of times. It's really good touch around the rim. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like Nerlens Noel if he had a little more offensive potential. So those are the guys I kind of look at if you're looking at big men. And you're going to have other guard opportunities. Cassius Winston from Michigan State is a hard-nosed guy who shoots the ball well. Devon Dotson from Kansas is another guy who, again, shot creator, maybe not as good as a shooter, but maybe has some potential. So those are a few of the guys I'm looking at in that 34-36 range.
All right, for more from Paul, go to 973ESPN.com. Follow him on Twitter at Paul Hudrick. And the NBA draft is tomorrow night right here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll have Paul back on Thursday to kind of recap it all and see if Daryl Morey made some magic on Wednesday night. Should be fun to watch. 5 picks in all. Paul, we appreciate it, man.
Of course, Mike. Looking forward to the rest of the season, man.
Absolutely. Paul Hudrick, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. You'll get great Sixers coverage from Paul Hudrick, Kevin McCormick, and the guys over at 97.3 ESPN.com. We will have the Sixers covered like no one else. Paul does a great job. Great sources, great insight.